There's all sorts of people with all sorts of political opinions in life, but there's nothing quite so irritating, I think you'll agree, as the reformed alcoholic that constantly berates people for having a drink. Likewise, there's nothing worse than listening to an ex-city trader who's already made his millions prattle on about how he's just realised in the last 10 years that the answer is socialism. And listen to this gentleman here.
This is very frustrating for me. I've been screaming for 5 years that this is going to happen, that this situation will get worse and worse and worse, which it has been doing. I was betting on it for 10 years before that. For people who don't know who I am, I was Citibank's #1 trader in the world in 2011. I got paid millions of pounds because I bet that our economy would collapse because we wouldn't deal with growing inequality. I quit that job in 2014 to try and stop that inequality from growing. I was doing that in private until the beginning of COVID, when it became clear that inequality would increase enormously. Does anyone know what the total government deficit is since the beginning of COVID? It's £1 trillion now, which is £20,000 for every single adult in the country. So if every single one of you is not £20,000 cash richer, someone else has your money.
Is that the debt or the deficit?
It's the increase in the debt, which is the deficit.
Right, yeah.
Does anyone know who has that £1 trillion?
I think you might be about to tell us.
It is the richest people in the country. It is the richest people in the country. Now, I'm going to ask you a question. If we pause the economy and give £1 trillion, £20,000 for every adult in this room and the rest of the country to the richest people in the country, and then unpause the economy, what do you think will happen to living standards for ordinary people? They will collapse. This is a problem of growing wealth inequality.
Now that we've listened to that, we need to put this in perspective. This man is a dangerous individual. He's selling something to the crowd here and to the nation at large. He's talking about a wealth divide, and indeed there is a wealth divide. The wealth divide between the richest in society is growing. But there's a very, very specific reason for that. The reason why the middle class is currently being eviscerated in our society, and the reason why the working class blue-collar worker is also being hit very hard, is because of a really simple thing called currency debasement. Now, what happened in 1971 was we removed the gold standard at something called Bretton Woods in America, and Richard Nixon decided to take away all sanity from the financial system. Now, after he'd done that, what happened was we entered into something called a fiat system. And what is the fiat system? Well, the fiat system means there's nothing backing all of the currencies that we have. And when that happens, governments don't have to hold anything in reserve. So they don't have to have gold reserves with which to issue currency. What they do is they just have the currency. And when they get a bit short of money, guess what they do?
Simply flooded the system with money.
Yes, we did. That's another way to think about it. We did.
Where does it come from? Do you just print it?
We print it digitally. So we as a central bank, we have the ability to create money digitally, and we do that by buying treasury bills or bonds or other government guaranteed securities, and that actually increases the money supply. We also print actual currency, and we distribute that through the Federal Reserve Bank.
And then what you do is you add 5 decades. And what we're at a situation now, year on year, because of money creation and because of how the economy's been mismanaged over the last 50 years by successive governments, we are at a stage now where the currency is being debased. This is the problem. This is why living standards are dropping. This is why the government has less money. And this is all just a function of currency debasement. As money is created, the value of money decreases. But as a result, because they're creating money, they're also increasing debt by purchasing bonds from the government. So you've got a double whammy going on here. You've got increasing debt, which means that you pay more interest on the debt. And then you've also got currency debasement, which is debasing the currency so everybody has less money. And then if you add a bit more time on and a bit more time on, what you create is a perfect storm. And it's a little bit like a whirlpool. It's a vortex that can't be escaped. And that's why you get this. These debt clocks continually going up. It is now, without any hyperbole, a mathematical impossibility to get out of this. It doesn't matter what governments all around the world do. It is now irrelevant. We've well past the time where it could be fixed through trimming a bit here, or can we have growth over there, and all of this. This is way beyond that. It's got many, many years ago, it passed the point of no return. And so now what governments all around the world are doing, they're just managing the decline. As the debt continues to increase, governments have to borrow more, the currency devalues, standard of living drops. And even as this man here who understands market dynamics and understands being a trader, he seems to think, well, if I take all the money from the rich people, then all the problems are going to be solved. Won't matter. You can take every penny from every billionaire on the planet and redistribute it to everybody that's walking around now, and it won't mean a thing. We're in too much debt. The vortex, the whirlpool of debt that we're in is in a death spiral, and we are unable to exit it until we have the largest economic crash in history. And throughout all of history, all fiat currencies, and when I say all, I mean 100% of all fiat currencies that have ever existed, and we can go back to Roman times where they started to dilute the coins, where you started out with a silver coin and then they kind of changed it a little bit to have less silver in, and all of that. This has been done throughout the ages by all governments, and 100% of the time all fiat currencies will fail, and they fail in a spectacular fashion, and we generally go in flows of about 100 years. And looking back to the Great Depression in America, etc., America is the world's central currency, and so what's happening? We are approaching the cliff edge, and all governments around the world are trying to do the same thing. They're all trying to balance income and expenditure, and it's an impossible task because it's impossible to do. So all governments are doing is they're managing the decline of all of their currencies, and eventually there's going to be such a big economic crash as to need a currency reset. The reason why we don't have a currency reset is because all of the rich people have their noses in the trough, and they're going to keep the system running for as long as they can, and central banks are going to keep creating money and creating money and creating money till the system locks up. And one day it will. Who knows when that'll be? I'm always amazed at the length of time that these people can keep this game going. They can keep this merry-go-round going round because it's within their interest to do so. But one day the piper is going to come calling and it's going to hurt. And at that point everything's going to get reset. But that's the game we're playing. And this man here, this gentleman here who's trying to convince you that if you tax all of the billionaires into oblivion, that it's all going to work out perfectly and we'll all have £20,000 in our pockets to go and spend in the economy and everything's going to be perfect. He's lying. It can't possibly work. It's amongst the stupidest plans I've ever heard. However, I'll let you make your own judgments on that, and it was lovely talking to you as ever. Thanks very much now.